Hey there, family. Elder Rodney Martin here, also known as the Preacher's Kid, and I would like to welcome you to the last episode of Season 1 of the Dear Preacher's Kid podcast. Thank you all for all of your support that you have given us over the last few episodes. Your response has been amazing, and we are committed to continuing to give you quality programming and conversation. And speaking of conversation, I am so excited to have my special guest here with me today to close out our first season, the Elder Bridgette Campbell-Hurt. I am so excited for her to be here. Bridgette is the daughter of probably what I consider to be one of the greatest preachers to ever walk the face of the earth, in the person of the late Bishop Willie James Campbell. And I am so excited to have you here today to talk about what our lives have been like as preachers' kids. So, Bridgette, I am so excited to have you here.
Are you ready for this?
I am absolutely ready to have this conversation. It's fun. I got so many stories about you that you probably don't even remember. Bridgette is like one of Chicago's quintessential songbirds. I remember 1992. So you're talking a good 33 years ago.
I was graduating high school. What do you remember from back then?
We were on 55th in Indiana at New G's recording.
My God.
At Life Center. And you led that song, If My People. And I remember there was a group of us. I was like 16.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a group of us. And I was sitting in the back of the church like, who is that? She destroyed that song. And you were what? Graduating high school?
Yeah. Yep. I actually joined New G when I was 15. Ricky asked my dad if I can join his choir. And my dad said yes. He said, just take care of my baby. And at the age of 15, I was in New G.
What was that like? Well, let's kind of rewind and then we're going to get to that.
Right.
But okay, so talking about life growing up in the Campbell house, the world knows who Bishop Willie James Campbell was, but those of us who grew up in this area revered this man. He was like, if we said we were going to St. James Church of God in Christ on a Sunday night,
You knew he was gonna have
it was
church.
never a question about what kind of church we were going to have. We would pile up. I had a Ford Tempo at the time and I was in college.
Mhm.
We would pile 6 to 7 people and we'd be sitting on top of each other trying to get to that leaning balcony on 109th and Princeton. But I go way past that. The first time I ever felt the presence of, I write all about this in my book.
Mm-hmm.
First time I ever felt the presence of God, I was on the St. James when they were on the west side.
Oh, come on. When the walls used to sweat.
Roosevelt Road.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I remember I was 7 or 8 years old.
Mhm.
And I remember we all, again, packed up from Joliet and drove up to St. James on a Sunday night. And I remember that particular night, the choir, I can remember this vividly. This was 40 years ago.
Wow.
Choir had on all white.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember we were sitting in the back of the church and Bishop said, I need somebody to jump up and say Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And they, everybody jumped like we used to do back in the day. And then, they was getting going on Ernie on organ, getting going and getting everybody riled up. But that last time he said, jump up and say Jesus, something hit me. And all I remember is I took off. I was like 8 years old.
Wow.
They were trying to catch me. And I remember one of the mothers was in the aisle saying, get it, baby. Get it. I could not pull myself together.
You was running and wasn't nobody chasing you, huh? Lord have mercy.
But-
Just like fire.
It was like fire. And I kept, and that kind of set my experience for like literally a week after that. I went to my parents and said I wanted to be saved.
Wow.
Because that was what salvation felt like to me. Like I could feel like that every day. I want to be saved. And
Right.
so that kind of developed this heart in me, for St. James and for being around Bishop Campbell. So growing up in the house, are you the only girl?
I am.
Wow. So I had a guest last episode, Evangelist Terren, who's also the youngest and the only girl of 5 kids. So what's that dynamic like? What was life growing up?
It was great because I was spoiled rotten. Come on, I got everything I wanted.
You the
Come
baby
on,
too,
come
aren't
on.
you?
I am.
Oh,
I'm the youngest.
You're the youngest. Okay.
Yeah.
And so you got
back then we used to say the baby, but now I say I'm the youngest. Right?
So she got youngest privileges. Look, my baby brother gets youngest privileges too, so I get it.
It was great. Like my brothers taught me how to fight because they're all older than me, and we fought each other as I got older because I'm like, no, you're not going to hit me and get away with it. No. So, and then they taught me how to punch. Like, no, you got to go in like this. Like, they taught me a lot of things. But growing up like with my mom and my dad, it was great. My dad literally, I'm not ashamed either. He bought me everything I wanted. Like, it was just, I remember my golden birthday. And the 17th of July, turning 17, he bought me all gold, everything gold. So, and just, I remember every holiday as a PK and our family, we always had people over our house.
Yeah,
like,
lots of
literally,
fellowship.
We lived across the street from Proviso East High School.
Wow.
So across the street from the high school was the tennis courts.
And
then next to the tennis court was the baseball field where they played softball.
Mm-hmm.
And then in our backyard was a basketball court.
Of course.
So
of course. You can't have a bunch of boys in a house and not have a basketball
court. I'm telling
court.
you, if you know, like, so Todd Delaney he lived around the corner from us.
Wow.
So Todd and his brother, which I went to school with, would always be in our backyard. And then you had the Ford Singers. Red and her brothers. They were always in our backyard. So we always had people at our house.
That's a lot of singing because y'all kept singers. Now, let's be clear. Nobody had to come to the Campbell house as a singer because they already had singers in the house. Outside of Bridget, I remember her older brother, Jesse. When Jesse used to sing Help Me to Say Yes, I would lose it every single time he sang that song. It would be like I had never heard it before. And he would destroy.
Jesse would get on our last nerve singing around the house. Now, I sing and been singing, since I was a little girl, but I never walked around the house. Whoa, 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 whoa. I'd be like, boy, shut up. Like, we be trying to watch TV and he walking around practicing his riffs. Like, will you please let us watch TV? Will you please let us take a nap? That was Jesse
quite
all the
honestly,
time.
I was probably that brother. That was always, like, I was always in the room harmonizing with choir music on my CD player and just, my music would be so loud
opposite.
that my mother would have to flash the lights so that I would know something, she needed me for something. The lights would go on and out.
That's too much. That's too much.
I was loud.
Listen, that's too much.
I'm a loud adult, but I was a louder kid.
Listen, I was different. I hung out in my room a lot.
Okay.
So we had the record players.
Yeah.
I would have the record players.
Yeah.
So when I wasn't in my room tending to myself, playing with my dolls, doing all the other stuff, my mother had me in the kitchen cooking. Now, my mom can cook and can still cook.
Yes.
And she did not play. My brothers didn't like it, but at the tender age of 7, 8, 9, she had me in the kitchen cooking. Oh, you gonna stand up on this thing? You gonna learn how to cook some eggs? They like, I don't want that. And she was like, no, she needs to learn how to cook, and you all are gonna eat it. So they was mad, and now
they don't want to eat your food.
But now they like, babe, you cooking, sis? What, you having something at your house, sis?
She was raising you up.
Listen,
she was raising you up.
Yeah, but back then they didn't like it. But now,
look, it paid off.
That's right.
So you said you got in New G at 15.
Yes.
So St. James was one environment. New G is a completely different environment.
Yeah.
What was that like? Well, let's go. When did you first realize you could sing? Like, who identified that gift?
I don't even think I ever realized that because I'm just not that type of person.
Okay.
I like to sing growing up. So me and my cousin, I have a cousin named Kendra.
Okay.
And me and Kendra used to sing like we would put our name in a thing to sing for the musicals and stuff. You're like, who put these kids that? So
they be requesting themselves.
Yes, we was requesting ourselves.
We gotta talk about that. This is back in the Dr. Mattie Moss Clark era when UNAC, which is AIM now, it was UNAC back then, and the UNAC midnight musicals were almost like amateur night at the Apollo, and so you got the opportunity to send your name up to request to be on the program. So we have all heard it here.
Listen, so at 4147 West Roosevelt Road, me and Kendra, she not innocent. If you ever see this Kendra, you not innocent, because we was both writing our name on there and we would do our little duets, honey. I think we was less than 10 years old.
That is
and putting our name on program. So, but yeah, we sing in the Sunshine Choir, and then graduated to the youth choir, and then I think it was my dad's birthday program, and I believe
that used to be a program in March.
Yeah, and I don't even know which one it was that Ricky heard me sing, and he was like, "I want to train you."
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, I used to be in the choir at school, in high school, and then madrigals, you sing with the little pitch pipe and you sing in a cappella. But that was another level.
Absolutely.
Going to
at
sing
15.
with Ricky.
Yeah.
And he would literally train us in rehearsal. He didn't play no games.
Yes.
You got to have your stuff together. You got to know your notes. He was teaching us. He was training us. And he was the first one to take time out of his schedule and, just being a part of the choir to actually train me as a lead singer.
Yeah.
Now, I grew up I'm a very honest person. I grew up in church. I had people in church that could have trained me and could have taken me under their wing, but they did not.
Yeah.
They didn't see in me what they saw in other people.
Gotcha.
And so that's what happened when I ended up going with Ricky. Ricky actually took time to train me as a lead singer. And there were some things that I just didn't know.
Yeah.
And I learned how to teach watching him.
Yeah.
I learned how to lead with his help and his tutelage.
Yeah.
And so I remember the recording where I did the first recording and I did He Will Forgive. That was the first recording.
Yeah.
And then I got caught up and happy and at the end of the song. So if you have the actual album, you can actually hear him saying, "Now come on and stop crying and finish singing this song." It's all on the it's all on the record.
And that's on the Promise album?
Yes.
I got to go listen.
It's on the Promise because I said, "Thank you, Jesus. Go, Jesus." He said, "Now come on." He snatched me. And so when I got home, my mom was like, "Well, you have to minister to the people. You have to learn how to minister and, let the people get what they need from God as God is using you. And then once you're finished ministering, then you can get yours."
Right.
I was like, but I couldn't help it. I didn't know what to do. I mean, I was 15. And that's stuff that you don't really learn that in church.
Absolutely.
Everything is kind of caught.
Yeah.
You're not trained how to, put the Holy Spirit on the back burner until you get,
because we're not taught that it can be. Like, it's always, it takes over you. You just got to yield.
Right.
And so, when you like, okay, I got a job to do. They depended. I have left the choir many a day. Let me just tell you, when I was directing the choir at my dad's church, I was known for just flying off the cuff in the choir. Be like, "I see y'all when I get back." Seriously, because I was never two seconds away from a praise break and just losing it.
And so as we grow in God and we grow in knowledge, we know
absolutely.
now what to do and how to handle situations like that. You can have your moment, but you can't actually tap out until you finish ministering.
Especially not when the people depending on you.
Right.
You got their attention and you just gone.
Woo!
That is funny. So you're leading songs at 15, and then you did If My People. You said you were graduating high school, so that's 17, 18. So you've got a lot of notoriety. People know who you are. Like, growing up in Joliet, people around Joliet knew who we were. But it was always something when you went to Chicago and somebody knew who you were. We always thought we had arrived if we went to Chicago and somebody was like, "Hey, what's up?" You're like, "Yep." He know who I am. But like outside of being Bishop Campbell's daughter, you're now a lead soloist in one of the top choirs in the country. Early, young in your life, how did you handle that? Like, how instrumental were your parents in keeping you grounded and not allowing all the church fame to kind of get to your head?
I honestly don't think my mother and father had to, because Ricky didn't play that.
That's great.
He was like, "You think you who?" Like Ricky didn't bite his tongue. He helped us to stay rooted and grounded.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so going to church every Sunday, because I still had to minister. And I remember my dad had to give permission because I was underage. I couldn't even drive. So I had to get rides to rehearsal by Gerald Hardy. Gerald Hardy stayed maybe about 20 minutes from us in Oak Park, and we were in Maywood.
Okay.
So he would come pick me up, take me, and then take me back home.
Okay.
And so I remember this is honest podcast, right?
It's honest.
So as the years went by, my dad gave the okay for me to sing.
Uh-huh.
And then a couple of years later, because we were so busy and we were traveling, he was like, "I regret ever telling you that you can sing with New G." And I was like, "Why would you say that?" He hurt my feelings. "Why would you say that?" He said, "Because you're always gone. I need you here." And so, and I mean, that was being a PK.
Yeah.
You know? So, and I mean, I stayed in until I think I was 19.
Uh-huh.
And then I started doing other stuff because that opened other doors.
I remember you doing a song with the Rutledge Sisters on their album. I remember you did a song with B Chase
when I tell
and
you,
Shabak.
I'm so thankful.
Every album I was listening to, I'm like, Bridgette is on this album.
It was a blessing.
Yeah.
And then after that, I remember we were at St. Mark for my dad's birthday thing. I think it was his birthday. We were using somebody's church. I remember we had on green.
I was about to say, y'all had on green because I was there.
And so Marvin, it wasn't Marvin Sapp. Yeah, it was Marvin Sapp. Marvin Sapp first. Yep. And then so I started singing background for Marvin Sapp, and then we were singing somewhere, and Fred was looking for singers.
Too, yeah.
Fred was looking for singers, so they gave me a call. And they were like, we need some background singers. We're getting ready to do a tour. And so I was like, well, I'm singing with Marvin. They knew I was singing with Marvin.
Yeah.
But for me, I needed to sit down and have a conversation with Marvin. Well, Bishop Sapp, I'm sorry. I had to sit down and have a conversation with him and let him know that, they needed singers and what did he think about it.
Uh-huh.
And at the time, and people don't know this stuff, at the time, he actually said, he has a bigger platform than me. And he said, I think you should go ahead and experience that.
Wow.
He said, you served me well. And he said, I think you don't pass up the opportunity. Go ahead and experience that bigger platform. I promise you.
That's amazing.
Like, it has never been, I don't know what people might think, of their relationship. I don't know what it is now. But back then, he gave honor to him.
Yeah.
And said, go ahead and experience that bigger platform at the time. Mm-hmm. And when I tell you, Marvin Pastor Bishop Sapp he just went on, because he wasn't looking for it.
Exactly.
He wasn't looking for it. He's still a man of integrity. I don't care what people say. He's still a man of integrity, and his focus. The late great Melinda Sapp, his late wife. They worked together, and his focus was ministry.
Yeah.
They didn't have no mess going on the road. They didn't play that.
Yes.
They did not play that. And so that was one of the best experiences that I had on the road, because it was a true ministry out on the road. Yeah. And I'm not trying to get nobody in trouble saying nothing. It's just this is the truthful podcast,
it's the truth,
right?
Of music.
Yeah.
Like Michael Weatherspoon and I were talking about that, and he said a statement in the last podcast I don't think I've ever forgotten. He said one of the biggest assumptions is that secular artists don't know God and that all gospel artists do. And there's a whole lot that goes on the road, even in gospel music. And so having that foundation, like, knowing Bishop Campbell, and you're his youngest and you're his princess, I know that there were foundational teachings that you got from your parents that helped kind of, in addition to the people that, trained you and taught you, that really helped keep you grounded. And I remember in the 90s when St. James was on 109th and Princeton, I don't recall too many Sunday nights where I didn't see you in the choir stand. I remember it was you, I believe it was your cousin Darlene, and there was one more young lady. I could see her face, but I can't remember her name, and y'all were staples on the front row of that steep choir stand. I used to always be afraid, like if somebody come running out that top row of that choir stand and hit that step wrong, it's going to be over. because we'd be sitting you
Oh my goodness.
and the balcony. The balcony was even worse because like literally St. James on a Sunday night started at 8:00. If you were not there by like 7:50, 7:45, you could not get a seat. I'm not talking main floor jam packed. And if you got there after 8, you might get a seat in the balcony. Otherwise, we'd be standing up along that wall in the back, watching the choir, the St. James Radio Choir.
Yeah.
Back in the day, there was not a song they sung that they could sing wrong. It was just unbelievable. And then Bishop would get there and he would rile that church, and we ran all over that balcony. I know 109th in Princeton like I was a member there.
Yeah.
And we went every Sunday for years. And
it was great.
It was a great time. And so let's transition a little bit. So that's mid-90s, 2000. I'm at my dad's church. I minister music. I'm teaching Sunday school. I'm kind of like his right-hand person. And I go to Progressive for a watch night service, December 1998. Never forget this. I go into the watch night service. I'd only heard of Progressive because Progressive was all the way on the west side. And we lived in Joliet, which was a south suburb. So going to Progressive was like an hour drive. And we were just not finna do that.
Right.
So it was always more convenient to go to St. James because we can get to St. James in 30 minutes as opposed to getting to Progressive in an hour. But that night, I was supposed to be a Progressive. And I remember going there that night and sitting in the service, and literally about 5 minutes into the service, the Lord spoke to me and said, "This is your church." And I was like, I don't know these people. And so now I had to make a transition. It took me a whole year to actually accept that this is what God was calling me to do. Like 99, I fought God that whole year because I was like, what is the church going to do if I leave? How are they going to handle it if I'm not here? Who's going to help Dad if I'm not here? But I knew God was calling me away. And so I think at the time we both arrived at Progressive, we were both coming from under our father's leadership. And I can say for me, getting up under that umbrella was necessary because there were things I needed to experience.
I ain't gonna cry.
There were things I needed to experience in ministry, and it almost kind of gave me my chops in ministry because it's one thing when you do it for your dad. It's always going to be good because it's your dad. Your dad is never going to say you, but with someone who doesn't have that connection with you, it's like, yeah, that was good, but that could be fixed. You need to tweak that. You need to check that. For me, it was such a part of my development to be under apostle for that time that I was there. I needed to not be the favorite. I needed to just be ministered to. I needed healing in a lot of areas of my life. You know, I felt like I gave up so much of my childhood for the church. And then when things in my life started going bad, I felt like the same people I gave my life for didn't want to have nothing to do with me. And so there was a little bit of bitterness. I never wanted to leave God. I was just sick of church. And so when I came to Progressive, I was literally sick of church. Like I knew I needed to be in church, but I needed a different environment. And so like how beneficial when you transitioned from under your father's ministry and started experiencing ministry in other places of worship, how crucial was that to your development as who you are now as the Elder Bridgette Campbell-Hurt?
Oh, well, first of all, it was very hard.
Yeah.
It was a very hard decision to make, but there was so much going on in my life and there was so much going on in my dad's life.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's best to move on rather than sit there and be mad, hurt, bitter, and just heal somewhere else. I had to move to heal. That is
good.
And I believe that if I stayed there, I wouldn't have healed. Sometimes when you separate yourself and come from amongst them, then it's totally different. So being at Progressive, I remember, Lord have mercy, the many nights that I either had to have someone drive me home because we were on 2nd and Progressive was on 13th.
Yeah.
Either drive me home or I had to wait in the parking lot until I could drive
drive
myself
yourself home.
home because the anointing and the Spirit of God
My
was so thick
God.
and heavy.
Woo.
That's because I was needing and I was wanting and I was vulnerable and I was open.
Yeah.
Had I not been open to the Holy Spirit getting attached to me, I never would have got it. I would have missed it every time. And it was so thick every night. It was so thick every night, and I was in need.
That's
I
the
was in
thing.
need.
I think I had given so much.
Mm-hmm.
I needed something to be poured back into me.
Yeah.
Like, it's one thing, for you to do what you do but you love it because you love it.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't always mean at some point you don't get empty.
Oh, listen.
And I was mad.
I just preached. I was praising God on empty.
I was empty when I came to that church.
Listen.
And the way the presence of God brought me back.
I'm telling you.
Because it was like, one or two things is going to happen at this point in my life. Either I'm going to walk away from all of this, or I'm going to get in the car and drive and never come back.
So I'm going to share something real personal. Because this is a real podcast.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Absolutely.
So
this is what we do.
I was going through having been in an abusive marriage, verbally, physically, mentally, and everything else while in church.
Yeah.
By somebody that grew up in church.
Yeah.
And it made me look at people differently.
Absolutely.
And it made me look at men differently. It made me look at my dad differently.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, you're supposed to protect me, and you didn't protect me.
Yeah.
And so, and then I looked at my ex-husband at that time. I was like, you took me from my comfort. You took me from the comfort of my home.
Yeah, the safety and security I had in my parents' house. Yeah, and this is what you brought me to.
Yeah, this is what you did. This is how you handled me. So it wasn't an easy situation for me. So being that progressive, I had so much junk. I had so much baggage. I had so much hurt. I had so much disappointment. And my dad and my mom were separated, heading for divorce in 2000. So it was like, it was so much.
A lot going on at the same time.
It was so much. So when I tell you, when I had the opportunity to lay on the floor and lay out before God, that's what I did, because that was the only outlet that I knew. I couldn't go bowling at the time to feel better. I couldn't go skating at the time to feel better. I needed Jesus to feel better. And so whatever I needed to do to get to his presence, get in his presence, that's what I had to do at Progressive. So that was like the place of my healing, and I will never forget it. It was just so much love. The people there, and to this day, the people that loved on me then, Pastor DeAndre, Corey, Elder Corey, Patricia Patterson, First Lady. So they would come over to the house every Sunday for dinner. I was cooking. That was my way of...
That was your part of your healing process.
So it was like, we will never forget those moments. And I'm thankful for it.
I never, and when we joined Progressive, we were still living in Joliet. And so to think we drove there almost an hour to church twice a Sunday. It wasn't just Sunday morning. It was Sunday morning and Sunday night.
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock. We'd be getting home at midnight with our baby in the back seat. The baby couldn't even want to get up in the morning to go to school because we done been in church all night. There would be so many nights I would be sitting in that parking lot on 13th after church just in tears. I could not pull myself together. Like, there was so much, and I shared this with Apostle when maybe about 5 or 6 months ago, the last time I was home, and I told him, you have no idea. Y'all have no idea. This church saved me. This church saved my ministry. This church helped me go on. This church helped me learn how to hurt and keep moving.
That's good.
And for me, because I don't like to hurt, because I don't like hurt people. And so like when you really do and handle people right, you expect people to do that to you. And then it's a difficult lesson.
Can we just stop right there? Can we pause right there?
Yes, we can.
Because I don't know what it is as PKs, Well, I know it's for me growing up. My dad told me one time, he said, no matter how people treat you, no matter what they say to you, you always remain a lady.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I didn't get it until I got older. Because I was like, why are you saying this to me? And I was a little girl, but I never forgot it.
Yeah.
But now I understand that people will mistreat you just because of who you are.
Because of who you are.
People will say mean things to you, and you can be the nicest giving person in the world, but they don't like you because of who you are. And then I found out they don't like you because of what you carry. When you carry an anointing, when you carry the weight of the glory of God on your life, and you don't have a clue, people just don't like you. You don't even know it.
Because that your aim is not to be seen or noticed.
Exactly.
You just, like, for growing up for us, the way they would position the privilege that it was to be used by God, they positioned it in my life in a way that I believed it. So it was... I never needed a big paycheck. I never needed my name to be called. It was just enough that God decided to use me.
Can I say something? You just said a paycheck. I didn't get paid from a church, working at a church, until I worked for Rock of Ages, and that was 2006. So all of the service unto God was without a paycheck until 2006.
Progressive.
I'm sorry, 2004, because I was there to 2006. I
was about to say that was probably my same time too.
But I'm telling you, everything was done.
Everything was done because
you
we just
love
loved
to do
God.
it.
You just
so
love
when I
God.
went to Rock of Ages, and they put in front of me, you gonna make XYZ, I just started crying. I was like, people make this kind of money in church. I was like so dumbfounded, and I was grown.
Yeah.
I was grown.
Yeah,
but I was like, I literally started crying.
Yeah.
And the lady was handing me tissue, and I didn't even know what to ask for. Pastor Wiley he said, how much you want? And I gave him a number because I'm like, okay, I could survive off this. Because back in the day, stuff didn't cost like it did. I can survive off of this. He was like, I pay my musicians this. What you really want? And I had to tell him, I said, I honestly don't know. And I was embarrassed because I really didn't know. And when they came back with the number, I said, Elio Throbo, Shondo, right?
Anyway, you bless me, Lord. This is the funny part. The exact same thing happened to me. I was still living here. And I've been gone from here. June will be 18 years since I left Illinois.
Wow.
18 years. I've lived everywhere. But I remember there was a Catholic church here, Sacred Heart Church. Shout out to Sacred Heart Church here in Joliet. They were a Black Catholic assembly here in town. So basically, they were heavily, like, you would go into their church, you would not know it was a Catholic church because they wore robes and they clapped and they sang our songs. And I was like, I ain't a Catholic church. So they called me and they were like, we want you to come and do a workshop with our choir, because I had my own community choir at the time, and we were traveling all around the city, and so people knew who we were. And so I went to meet with the father in the rectory. I was like, I'd be honored, because I had directed Dad's church choir for years. And they gave us an appreciation once a year, and gave us a little
this bring back so many
chicken
memories.
box, and we got a check once a year.
Listen,
now that St. James chicken was good.
Let me just input right here. So I worked at a church. And so I was building a ministry and everything, getting the musicians and stuff. Now they would bring the musicians in to pay the musicians and wouldn't give me no money.
Wow.
And it was basically like, you got to earn your keep. You can have a service and raise. I was like,
yeah,
is that how y'all do? But I serve.
But you serve.
And then here come that Rock of Ages money, honey. Okay, go ahead.
When you do it because you love to do it, the opportunities that you're looking for
Glory to God.
end up opening up. Because when he said, and I was like, I don't know what to ask for. Like, I said, I threw out like some crazy number. He was like, okay, so it was like a 3-night revival. And I was like, if I do $50 a night, I said, you can give me a couple $100. I guess that'll help me get my gas. And he looked at me. He was like, are you serious? And I was like,
we didn't know.
I was like, did I ask for too much? And he was like, do you know how gifted you are and how honored we are to have you here? And the check Them Catholic
on.
people wrote me
Come on.
after I did that workshop that week. Almost
on.
made me convert.
Come on.
I was going to be a Pentecostal Catholic. I was going to be in there hollering and speaking in tongues while everybody was putting water on their head. I was going to be in there loud.
Listen.
But it also was like, wow. Because I think a lot of us PKs, and let's just tell the honest truth, honest podcast, a lot of times our parents use us to build their ministries. And so there was a period of time in my father's ministry where I was on the organ, my other brother was on the drums, and my other brother was directing the choir, and wasn't none of us getting no money.
And I can't, that's not my testimony.
None of us was getting
that. I can't say that because you had Ernie, you had Eric,
Yeah.
they were older than me.
Yeah.
So I was always younger. So it was always, hey, little girl, hey, little Bridge, hey, little Bridge. So that wasn't my testimony that, and so when I look back over my life, I just wasn't taught a lot. I caught a lot.
Yeah.
And then, you walk
you had
around,
opportunities that a lot of people didn't have.
You walk around as PKs and they expect you to know the Bible back and forth and stuff. And like, I wasn't called. My dad was called. He's the pastor of the church, not me. But it was so many expectations on
Talk
you
about
as
the expectations.
a PK. And it's like, no, that's not fair to me. And
because I'm a kid just like your kids are kids.
I'm telling you. And it caused me, I think I built a wall. And when I'm gonna tell you, and you mentioned this earlier about being in the different ministries and learning from each ministry.
Yeah.
When I tell you that Pastor Wiley, I call him, he's another father to me. He helped me so much because I had built up a defense mechanism.
Absolutely.
I had been hurt so much in divorce and stuff like that, being abused and stuff, and then wanting my dad's love more now that I left the church. It's like the relationship wasn't bad, it wasn't severed, but it wasn't the way it used to be.
Right.
And so my defense was to cry about everything.
Yeah.
I mean, I cried about everything, grown, and sit up here crying. When I tell you, Pastor Wiley, he was correcting me on something. And I just knew that, I was giving my all, and it was like I started crying. And he looked at me. If you don't stop crying so much, like I'm not, my right hand to God. He was like, if you don't stop crying so much, you better. He said, dry them tears. When I tell you, he got me together. But the one thing I picked up from him that was not so good was I became a hard leader.
Yeah.
So I started ruling with an iron fist.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay.
How quickly did that backfire?
I didn't realize it until I moved to Georgia.
Okay.
And everybody in Georgia is nice. Everybody speaks to everybody. You walk by, hey, how you doing?
Hey, y'all.
Good? Yeah.
How y'all doing?
In Chicago, you looking like, why they speaking to me? You know me? And no, it's just how they are
I moved
there.
from Baltimore, where don't nobody talk to nobody.
Oh, wow.
To Atlanta, where they talk, everybody talks to everybody. And I'm like, if I hear one more Waffle House, hey, y'all, how y'all doing?
So it wasn't until I got there, I had to realize this spirit that is upon me is not of God. I have got to release this heart. Because people are nice. You don't have to treat them like that. So I had to get rid of that. So when I tell you that I worked for E. Dewey Smith, and I worked for the church that moved me down there was Destiny World Church. Destiny World Church. And then E. Dewey Smith, and then the last church that I was at was Bishop Craig Oliver.
Okay.
And that is the church that really, really got me to being the organizer that I am. Now, I had it at Rock of Ages.
Okay.
I had everything to a T there for that ministry. And that was the first multi-campus and multi-service ministry.
Yeah.
But then when I moved to Atlanta, Elizabeth, it was another one. So I was like, oh, I remember this from Rock of Ages.
Got some tools.
But I can't take the mean stuff to this church. But I can take the organization that I had because I needed it. Because they have 5 campuses and a whole lot of services. So I started out at one campus and then I was promoted to being over all of the campuses.
Okay.
So everything was preparation.
Yeah.
And Bishop Dan
Yeah.
Willis, who is my pastor now,
Yes.
has been for the past 13 years. I love him so much. He teaches us that everything is preparation.
Yeah.
So whatever you go through in life, it is preparing you for something else.
Absolutely.
And what is for you, my husband, Pastor Bridgette Hurt, I love you so much. He says what is for you will never miss you. And if it's for you, it won't miss you. So you just cannot go through life thinking that, I got it so bad, I'm going through this, I'm going through that. Nope, it's preparing you for something else. So you may be hurting right now, you might be going through right now. People might not like you, they might talk about you. They talking about Marvin so bad right now, and it don't even make sense.
You know what?
It's just setting
the
him
people
up
who have
for
the
something
most
else.
to say are the people who don't even participate in church.
Exactly.
And so
we've been closing the doors of the church for and this is what I say, and I don't know if I'm gonna get in trouble for this, but I have to say this because I told this to my husband yesterday. I said this was not even a Bishop Sapp issue that he said close the doors.
Yeah.
It was an issue of not the organization, but who's ever over the ushers. Because if they had a meeting before then and had everything set up like we did in back in church, the ushers knew. Close it. It's offering time. Close the door.
Wasn't nobody walking.
He shouldn't have had to tell them to close the doors.
Not only could you not go outside, you couldn't go downstairs.
Tell me about it. So I want to know who's the leader of those ushers, because whoever that leader was, who set them up prior to service, I want to know who that leader is, because that's the person that should be on these commercials.
Security wasn't on this job.
Listen.
Keeping these doors.
The doors were supposed to be closed already. But that's stuff that we learned growing up in church, being PKs, being church babies, and all that stuff. It's great. It's just great.
I always tell, like, for all of the crazy stuff that I experienced in church, I wouldn't trade a bit of it.
I'm telling you.
I wouldn't even, and I just had my 30th high school reunion last year. So it was about 7 months ago.
Yeah.
And I was conversing with a few of my classmates, and they all remember me as the gospel choir boy, church boy. And they were like, you still have it together. And I would sit there and I'd be like, I used to despise how involved my parents were and how much they used to can't go there, can't do that, can't hang with them, gotta be in church, we got service, I don't care what kind of baseball game, a basketball game, we got the church. But now, I do not regret a single day of I don't regret the teaching,
Let me tell you something funny.
The training, none of it.
My mother, because at an early age, women, they're able to have children. Depending on how fast you develop.
Yeah.
Baby, my mama scared me so bad. She said, now if you have a baby, now you're able to have a baby now, but if you have a baby, I want you to know you're going to have your baby and your backpack with your baby and your baby in your arms going to every basketball game, every school dance, every football game. She said, because I'm not babysitting.
Yeah.
I never had a baby. And not knowing that, it didn't scare me. Like God didn't bless me to have children. But when I tell you, she scared me so bad.
The saints knew how to scare you.
And she was so nice about it. But I know what she said, she meant it.
I remember one of the saints told me, so this was years ago. I may have been a teenager. And right here in Joliet. And there was a little place in one of the malls here. It was like a teenage club, so to speak. So by club, we're not talking about, this is Jefferson Mall back in the day for context, which doesn't even exist anymore. So it was this place at Jefferson Mall, and it was so generic, it was called The Club. But it was like a little teenage club where all the kids used to go. Well, my sanctified parents, we knew wasn't none of the Martins gonna be nowhere near The Club because 2 reasons. The club is in the middle of the mall. And so there's only one way in and one way out of the club. And so anybody could be walking through the mall and see you coming out of it. So we got slick one night. Decided we was going to tell a lie. I still remember the people I was with. I will never say your names.
Why did you do that?
That's under the blood.
Why did you do that?
But we told them we were going to the movies because the movie theater was also in the mall. And so technically we could get dropped off at the mall, walk towards the movie theater, make a U-turn at the food court, and head towards the club, which is what we did. Only to see one of the Saints' kids in the club.
So both of y'all in there
what
cutting
did
up.
she do? She went back and told her mother that.
So she was allowed. Wait, she was allowed. Oh, okay.
I wasn't. They
Okay.
knew where my parents stood on that.
Okay.
And so she went and told her mother, "Hey, I saw Roddy at the club," and she was like, "You did?" So I don't know if she ever told my parents, but she came to me the next day. That we went to the club on a Saturday, services on a Sunday morning. She came to me after church and she said, "Did you have fun last night?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am." And she said, "Did you ask your parents?" And I said, "No." And she said, "You need to tell them." She said, "And if you don't it was right before Thanksgiving. I still remember. She said, "And if you don't tell them, your food ain't gonna taste good on Thanksgiving until you repent."
Stop it. Are you serious?
So I was convinced at that point that every time I lied, my food was gonna taste bad. She had me terrified that if I lied, my food was gonna taste bad. She said my food wasn't gonna taste good on Thanksgiving. And for a 13-year-old who was fat and greedy, the worst thing you could tell me is that I'm not gonna be able to eat on Thanksgiving and my food ain't gonna taste good. So I went crying to my parents and like, "I did so bad," and I was so crying.
That is so good. Did you get a whooping?
I didn't get a whooping.
Okay.
They put me on punishment.
Confession is good for the soul.
Amen. And that food was awful good on Thanksgiving.
Oh my God.
And so because the food was good, I'm almost convinced she knew what she was talking about because I never
Wow. Your food ain't gonna taste good.
Told me if I don't tell the truth. My food was not going. What kind of sorcery was the saints putting on us as kids? What kind of Harry Potter black magic is that?
Your food ain't
That is hilarious.
good.
All right, we get silly now. We're gonna reel it in. So now you're an elder in the Lord's church. Your husband is one of the associate pastors at Lighthouse, and God has really elevated and brought you up. Did you ever think, when you're talking about your dark days, when you're talking about that 2000, 2001, 2002 period, did you ever think you'd be here?
No. No. I mean, ain't nowhere around. No. And I told him when I met him, we gonna have a good friendship. We're gonna be really good friends. And we talked about where we were in life at that time. And I had just moved back from Atlanta. I just fresh out of a divorce. And I was like, I'm not ever doing this again. I wasn't looking for it. I didn't want it. I needed to come back here and heal. It's like, do we have to keep going through for the oil to stay on our life? I was like, it's just
how much more question we got to do, Jesus?
It's too much. And so, we had that understanding. We did. And so I knew that I needed to go through some deliverance because at this point in my life, I was mature. I was in God. So I knew that I had baggage and I knew how to get rid of my baggage. There's one thing to walk around stuffy, hurt, depressed, and don't know how to get free.
How to deal with it,
I knew it.
You knew how to deal with it.
So I'm like, okay, I need to go through deliverance. I went through deliverance and I needed to be made whole again. And so once I focused on me and made sure that I was good, God was doing whatever he needed to do within Pastor Bridgette Hurt himself. So that was between him and God. So I was focused on me. And once I started focusing on me and then God was doing whatever he needed to do with him, that's when things happen. And we can, because neither one of us wanted relationships. And so that's what happened. And we ended up dating, and it was a short dating because we didn't need to.
Because you all kind of knew each other already.
And I had told God, I said, I don't trust myself to make any decisions for my life anymore.
Wow.
And
say that again.
I told God I don't trust myself to make any decisions because what had happened in my past was I kept doing what I wanted to do.
You kept following your leading.
Yes. And I not once, even, and I'm going to go back to the Truthful podcast, in my first marriage, I knew that I wasn't supposed to marry him. And it was the night before the marriage that I called it off. And my parents and his parents, we done paid too much. My parents were like, we done paid too much money for this reception. Y'all gonna go ahead and get married. Y'all gonna be all right. First mistake. But being young, you listen to your
listen to what you're
parents. You
told.
listen,
Yeah,
and it's like what they went through and how they handle things
It's
being married is different.
Way different.
And so I went on ahead with it because that's what I was told to do, but I knew.
You knew.
And so at this point in my life, when I came back from Atlanta, I was like, listen, I don't trust myself to make no more decisions for myself. Lord, my life is in your hands.
You got to choose.
Yes.
If you're going to give me somebody, you got to choose.
Yes. And so when I tell you, God is so good. Oh my God, this is year 9 for us.
Wow.
And
That's
I'm
amazing.
so thankful to God. I'm almost speechless because I never knew love like this.
Yeah.
I never knew that it would exist for me. Because of all the stuff that I've been through. And it's been such a blessing. And then to work with somebody in ministry, like I minister music, he's the music director. And so I never thought that it could be.
It's a different world.
Yes. And so I thank God for it. And even on the ministry side of things, I never thought that I would be Elder Bridgette. Never thought that I would be getting ready to be ordained as Pastor Bridgette. No, because I always ran from it. I'm like, no, my dad's the one that's called. My mom is the one that's called.
To this day,
that's not
if
me.
Somebody says, Pastor Martin, that's my daddy. Or that's my brother. Now I got a brother who pastors. So I get it. Like that is not the title you want on you. Like I've always said, God, if you don't put this on me, I ain't taking it off of nobody else. Like it ain't that serious.
Right.
for me. So you've made, or you got like this amazing story of how God like redeems and restores, and he uses all the broken pieces of your life to really craft a beautiful ending. What would you say to a young woman in her early 20s, maybe another PK, another daughter of a pastor, or another young woman who's grown up in the church, who's really trying to find her place in God, trying to really establish her identity as a Christian young woman, maybe potentially waiting on love? Like, how would you minister to somebody who was where you were 20, 25 years ago? What would you tell them? If you said that your parents had told you go ahead and do it, what would you have wanted someone to say to you in that moment? What did you need to hear?
I needed to hear wait. I really needed to hear wait. And I would encourage, and if someone is facing something like right now and you're trying to figure out where you're going, what you need to do, this and that, my words of encouragement and advice would be to really focus on yourself and your identity. Make sure that you are who God has called you to be. Yes. And that you aren't shaped by your parents' identity or whatever organization you are a part of. Make sure that you're doing the will of God. And you have to know what the will of God is for your life. And you can't, like, somebody can prophesy and tell you what it is, but you have to know for yourself because it's just a confirmation of what God has already revealed to you. So I would say, don't trust yourself to make decisions for your life. Make sure.
That is, I promise you, that's the tagline right there.
I'm telling you, do not trust yourself to make decisions for your life. Make sure that it is God's will for your life. Make sure that you are doing what you are supposed to do, and then love will find you. You don't look for love, because I look for love in all the wrong places, and baby, I got all the wrong men. All the wrong men.
She's helping somebody today.
So I'm telling you, make sure
somebody today
that they find, because it's biblical. He that findeth the wife findeth the good thing and obtaineth favor. So it's not for you to find a man. It's not for you to find your husband. It's for you to be ready.
Be
when
prepared.
He comes. Be ready. Be also ready. So make sure that you are ready for God's blessings to come to you. But God is not going to send his best to a mess. So you have to make sure that you are together from head to toe. Okay? And just make sure.
Inside and outside.
Come on. Listen, I'm telling you.
There's some pretty outsides and some ugly insides.
Yeah, you jacked up on the inside. Nobody want to deal with that.
Nobody wants to deal with that. So. That's good. That's good, like, Friday night, like they used to do us when we was kids, where the pastor sat down and he just bring the little lectern down on the. He didn't preach in the pulpit on Friday nights. They brought the little stand down where he could be down in the congregation with the saints. That's where they really told you about yourself.
I'm telling
Friday
you.
nights is when they told you get your life right.
I want so bad to write a book, but when I sat down with a lady to help me, the first thing she said was, you have to make sure that you want everybody to know that you're ready to write a book.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to write a fictional book, a fictional character. And then it's like she said, you have to make sure that you're ready for people to know what's going to go in your book.
That's the thing. And even now, you know, since we putting it out there, this is coming. But I'm actually working on a book myself. And that's one of the things I've been struggling with is how much of me do I want to put in here?
Yeah.
Just because there are some things that I've kept close to the vest. But then sometimes I wonder, well, I don't even want to say I wonder, I probably know that, you know, everything that we deal with and go through isn't necessarily for us. And so there could be somebody flipping through the pages of this book that's right now where I used to be. And so I've really it's been a little bit cathartic. It's been healing for me, sort of to be able to write down and be able to be honest and say, yeah, I love church, but I didn't like that. And I didn't like that. And I didn't like how this person talked to me. I didn't like how this person used me. I didn't like how I was overlooked. I didn't like how I was made to feel like the only reason we existed is because the church was taking care of us. And so they'll throw that in your face that they doing for your parents. And we hear the little comments and the little nasty stuff they say about our parents coming out of the bathroom, sneaking around in the kitchen, coming up the steps in the back in the parking lot. We hear all of those things, and then we got to keep it in, and we got to put up the front. We got to be together. We got to represent the family. And so that's a lot of pressure that if you're not ready, and again, I deal with a lot of that in the book, but thank you, Bridgette. I appreciate you for this has been an amazing
And we probably didn't even cover everything we were supposed to, because we just started talking. It's just when PKs meet, honey, when PKs meet. But yeah, thank you so much for having me.
It has been a pleasure, and this has been an amazing way to wrap up our first season. I'm just blown away, and I believe that some of the realness that was shared in this particular episode is going to really reach out and help somebody. And that's the goal of ministry, right? We're not doing what we do just for us. We're not doing just what we do so we could have a platform, but the ultimate goal is to reach somebody. And so thank you for being with us, Elder Bridgette. We are going to have this kind of conversation again where we're going to gather a bunch of PKs and potentially do a conference or something where we can really minister to each other. I think pastors need healing. I think pastors' kids need healing. I think pastor spouses need healing. There's so much in that. Church is an organism, but it's a beast sometimes. And so when you're dealing with people, even if God is the focus, whenever you insert people into it with their opinions and their ideas, you know, there's an element of the opportunity for things to go wrong. And so we have to learn how to deal with all of that and be honest about it. But again, thank you so much. This has been an amazing conversation. I want you all to stay tuned. Season 2 will be coming up in August. We've got some amazing guests lined up and some more conversation for you. So thank you for joining the Dear Preachers podcast. Don't leave us. Stay tuned.